The suitcase sat on our bed like a coffin, and Elise was packing it with the care of an undertaker. Designer clothes folded with surgical precision, that new perfume I'd never seen her wear around me, and underwear that definitely wasn't from our anniversary shopping trip last year. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Just a girl's weekend," she said without looking up, her voice carrying that practiced casualness that made my carpenter's hands itch to build something or tear something down. "Kara's been planning this spa retreat for months. You know how my sister gets when she doesn't get her way." I leaned against the doorframe of our bedroom, watching my wife of 8 years lie to my face with the expertise of a seasoned politician. The October wind rattled our Maine cottage windows, and I could smell the salt air mixed with the dying leaves. Our little coastal town was settling into its off-season rhythm, which made Elise's sudden need for a spa weekend even more suspicious. "Funny," I said, keeping my tone light. "Last week you said Kara was broke after her divorce." Elise's hands paused for just a microsecond over a black lace bra I'd never seen before. "She got her settlement money. You know how these things work, Jack." Actually, I knew exactly how these things worked. I'd been a contractor in this town for 15 years, and I'd renovated enough homes after messy divorces to recognize the signs. The late nights at her hotel job, the new clothes, the way she'd started holding her phone like it contained state secrets. "Where's the spa again?" I asked. "Bar Harbor, that new place with the mineral baths." She zipped the suitcase with finality. "Don't stress about it, Jack. It's just me and the girls, relaxing and catching up." Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a message preview from Danielle. But in that split second before Elise snatched it away, I caught a glimpse of what looked distinctly like a man's face in the contact photo. "New friend?" I asked. "Just work stuff." She clutched the phone against her chest like a shield. "You wouldn't be interested." Elise worked as an events manager at the Tidewater Inn, our town's fanciest hotel. In the summer, she coordinated weddings and corporate retreats for wealthy tourists who wanted to experience authentic Maine charm without giving up their luxury amenities. It was good work, and she was good at it, but it also meant she met a lot of traveling businessmen with expense accounts and flexible morals. "I packed some of that craft beer you like in the fridge," she said, switching to her nurturing wife voice. "And Mrs. Callahan next door has your number if anything comes up with the house." Mrs. Callahan was our 70-something neighbor who knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. If Elise was setting up alibis with the local gossip network, this weekend trip was definitely not about spa treatments. "How thoughtful," I said. "I might call Mason, see if he wants to help me finish that deck project." Mason was my apprentice, a 25-year-old kid with more tech skills than carpentry sense, but he was loyal and observant. More importantly, he had a drone and a flexible relationship with privacy laws. Elise kissed my cheek, and I caught a whiff of that expensive perfume again. "Don't work too hard while I'm gone. Maybe you could use a break, too." After she left, taillights disappearing down our gravel driveway, I sat in my workshop and stared at the half-built birdhouse on my workbench. My hands knew what to do with wood and nails and honest materials, but this situation required different tools. I was reaching for my phone to call Mason when Elise's iPad chimed from the kitchen counter. She'd forgotten it, and it was still connected to our home Wi-Fi. The notification showed a new photo in her shared album. The image made my blood turn to ice water. Elise stood on a hotel balcony, sunset painting the sky behind her, and a man's arm was wrapped around her waist. The timestamp showed it was taken 20 minutes ago. Not this morning like she'd claimed, but right now, while she was supposed to be driving to meet her sister. I recognized the balcony. It belonged to the Seaside Manor, a romantic bed and breakfast about 10 miles down the coast. I'd installed their custom kitchen cabinets 2 years ago. The man in the photo was tall, well-dressed, and definitely not Kara. I called Mason. "How do you feel about a little digital archaeology?" "Depends," he said. "Are we talking legal archaeology or the fun kind?" "The kind where my wife thinks I'm an idiot." "Oh, that kind. I'll be right over." Mason arrived 30 minutes later with his laptop bag and a grin that meant trouble. He was the kind of kid who could hack a smart doorbell but needed help hanging a picture frame, and right now I needed his particular set of skills. "Show me what we're working with," he said, settling at my kitchen table like a surgeon preparing for an operation. I handed him Elise's iPad. "She left this behind. It's synced to her phone." Mason's fingers flew across the screen. "Password?" "Try our anniversary date." "Nope." "Wedding date?" "Try her birthday." The screen unlocked, and Mason whistled low. "Amateur hour. Okay, Let's see what secrets your wife's been keeping." The next hour was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Mason recovered deleted text messages, browser history, and photo metadata with the casual efficiency of someone who'd grown up in the digital age. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of my marriage. "Daniel Ferris," Mason said, pulling up a contact card. "Business consultant from Boston. Looks like they've been texting for about 6 weeks." The messages started professional. Daniel was apparently helping the Tidewater Inn optimize their event booking system, but they quickly turned personal, then intimate, then explicit enough to make my jaw clench. "There's more," Mason said quietly. "Looks like she's been planning this weekend for a while. And Jack, it's not just a weekend." He showed me a browser search history that read like a roadmap to betrayal. How to file for divorce in Maine, community property laws, what happens to business assets in divorce. But the worst part was a text thread between Elise and someone named Ava, her coworker at the hotel. Elise: "Jack's been so suspicious lately. I think he knows something." Ava: "Just stick to the plan. Once you're with Daniel full-time, none of this small-town stuff will matter." Elise: "I feel bad sometimes. He's not a bad guy." Ava: "He's also not going anywhere. You are. Don't let guilt trap you in a life you've outgrown." I stared at that last message until the words blurred. A life she'd outgrown. 15 years of building something together, and I was just an old outfit she was ready to donate to charity. "What do you want to do?" Mason asked. I thought about it for a long moment, listening to the wind rattle our windows and the distant sound of waves against the rocky shore. In the summer, our little town was full of tourists who came for the picturesque scenery and authentic New England charm, but in October, it was just us locals, and we all knew each other's business. "First, I want to know exactly where they are and what they're planning," I said. "Then I want to send my wife a message she'll never forget." Mason grinned. "Now you're talking my language." We spent the next hour setting up surveillance. Mason showed me how to use the Find My app to track Elise's location, and he launched his drone from my backyard for aerial reconnaissance of the Seaside Manor. The little aircraft was nearly silent and equipped with a camera that could read license plates from 100 feet up. "There's her car," Mason said, pointing at his laptop screen. "And that's a BMW with Massachusetts plates parked right next to it." I recognized the BMW from the hotel parking lot. I'd seen it there several times over the past month, always in the VIP section reserved for high-end guests. "Daniel Ferris drives a BMW," I said. "Looks like we found our lovebirds." Mason landed the drone and packed up his equipment. "What's the plan?" I walked to my workshop and selected a few tools. Nothing dramatic, just the basic kit of a man who solved problems with his hands. "The plan is to remind my wife that actions have consequences, and to teach Mr. Daniel Ferris that small-town carpenters aren't as stupid as city consultants think." "I like it already," Mason said. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep monitoring their location. If they move, I want to know where they're going." I grabbed my jacket and keys. "And Mason, this stays between us until I say otherwise." "You got it, boss. But Jack, be careful. Guys like Daniel, they don't fight fair." "Neither do I said. "He just doesn't know it yet." I drove to the Seaside Manor, taking the long way through town. Main Street was quiet in the October evening. Most of the tourist shops already closed for the season. The locals who remained were the ones who understood that small-town life meant everyone knew everyone else's secrets, and everyone remembered who kept their word and who broke it. The manor sat on a bluff overlooking the ocean, all romantic Victorian architecture and overpriced charm. I parked across the street and watched the building for 20 minutes, noting the comings and goings, the staff patterns, the security cameras. Then I took out my phone and composed a text message to my wife. "Having a great evening, too. Decided to take that bachelor trip I've been talking about. Don't come back expecting the same home you left." I attached a photo I'd taken earlier. Me on our local beach with Lila, the bartender from Murphy's Pub. She'd agreed to pose for a friendly selfie when I'd explained I needed to send a message to someone who thought I was predictable. I hit send and watched the message deliver. Then I drove home to plan the next phase of my wife's education. The Harvest Festival was the kind of small-town event that brought everyone together, whether they wanted to be there or not. Local businesses set up booths along Harbor Street, the fire department sold lobster rolls, and the high school band played patriotic songs with varying degrees of success. It was also the perfect place for public confrontations, because in a town of 3,000 people, privacy was a luxury nobody could afford. I arrived early Saturday morning, ostensibly to help set up the craft fair booth where I displayed some of my custom furniture pieces. Really, I was there because Mason had texted me that Elise and Daniel were heading back into town, and I wanted to control the battlefield. Jack Harper, Mrs. Callahan waved me over to the church bake sale table. I saw Elise leave yesterday with quite a lot of luggage for a spa weekend. Mrs. Callahan had the supernatural ability to notice everything that happened in our neighborhood, and the social skills to spread information faster than wildfire. She was also genuinely fond of me, which meant she was probably fishing for gossip to use as ammunition on my behalf. She's having quite the adventure, I said carefully, meeting new people, trying new experiences. Mrs. Callahan's eyes sharpened. New people, you say? A business consultant from Boston. Very sophisticated, from what I hear. How interesting. Mrs. Callahan's tone suggested she found it exactly as interesting as I'd hoped. I do hope she's being careful with sophisticated strangers. I left Mrs. Callahan to work her magic and made my way to Murphy's Pub, which had set up an outdoor beer garden for the festival. Lila was working the taps, her red hair tied back and her sleeves rolled up for efficiency. How'd your photo shoot work out? She asked, sliding me a beer. Perfect. Thanks for playing along. Any time. That wife of yours has been getting too comfortable thinking she's smarter than everyone else. Lila lowered her voice. Speaking of which, her boyfriend's been in here twice this week, flashing cash and bragging about his business deals. Real charmer. What kind of bragging? The kind where he talks about upgrading his lifestyle and trading up from small-town thinking. Made it sound like he was doing some local girl a favor by rescuing her from this place. The beer turned bitter in my mouth. Did he mention names? Didn't have to. Half the town knows Elise has been acting like she won the lottery lately. Lila glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Word is, he's been promising to set her up in Boston, help her start her own event planning business. Generous of him, isn't it? Of course, Tommy Brennan was in here last night saying Daniel's been asking questions about local real estate values and divorce laws. Seems like he's doing his homework. Tommy Brennan was a lawyer who handled most of the town's legal work. If Daniel had been consulting with him, it meant this wasn't just an affair, it was a business plan. I was processing this information when Mason appeared at my elbow, slightly out of breath. Boss, they're here. Just pulled into the parking area by the bandstand. I could see them now, walking hand in hand through the crowd like they owned the place. Elise wore a sundress I'd never seen before, and Daniel was dressed in the kind of casual clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They looked like a magazine ad for successful couples living their best lives. They also looked like they were putting on a show, making sure everyone could see how happy and perfect they were together. Time for the opening act, I said. I intercepted them near the lobster roll stand, timing my approach so we'd meet in the middle of the biggest crowd. The high school band was playing God Bless America with enthusiastic imprecision, and half the town was gathered around the makeshift stage. Elise, what a surprise! I smiled like I'd just run into an old friend. I thought you were at a spa in Bar Harbor. My wife's face went through several interesting color changes. Jack, we decided to come back early. We? I turned to Daniel with my friendliest carpenter's smile. I don't think we've been properly introduced. Jack Harper. I held out my hand. Daniel shook it with the kind of grip that was supposed to intimidate. Daniel Ferris. I'm a business consultant working with the Tidewater Inn. How fascinating. And you're consulting on what exactly? Operational efficiency. Revenue optimization. Daniel's voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who was used to impressing people with buzzwords. Small businesses often don't realize their full potential. Like marriages, I said pleasantly. Sometimes people don't realize what they have until they're about to lose it. The crowd around us was starting to take notice. In a small town, any conversation that carried an undercurrent of tension drew attention like blood in the water. Jack, Elise said quickly, maybe we should talk privately. Why? Mr. Ferris seems very interested in our local community dynamics. I kept my eyes on Daniel. Tell me, as a consultant, what's your professional opinion on the ethics of mixing business with pleasure? Daniel's jaw tightened. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. I raised my voice just enough to carry over the band music. Is it standard business practice to take your clients' wives on romantic getaways? The conversations around us stopped. Mrs. Callahan appeared at my left shoulder like a heat-seeking missile, and I could see other familiar faces turning in our direction. That's enough, Daniel said, stepping closer. You're making a scene. Am I? Because from where I stand, you're the one who's been making scenes. In my wife's workplace, in my town, in my marriage. Elise grabbed my arm. Jack, please, not here. Why not here? I shrugged her off gently but firmly. These are our neighbors, our friends. Don't they deserve to know what kind of business consultant the Tidewater Inn has been hosting? Daniel's face was red now, and his hands were clenched into fists. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know about the deleted text messages, the secret credit cards, the divorce law research. I smiled at the growing crowd. I also know about the BMW with Massachusetts plates that's been parked at romantic bed and breakfasts around here. That's when Daniel made his mistake. He took a swing at me. I'd been expecting it. Guys like Daniel, they were used to solving problems with money and intimidation, but when that didn't work, they defaulted to violence. I sidestepped his punch easily. 15 years of construction work had given me reflexes he couldn't match. Daniel's momentum carried him forward, and I helped him along with a gentle push that sent him stumbling directly into the lobster roll stand. He went down in a cascade of melted butter, coleslaw, and steamed lobster meat, landing face first in a tray of chowder. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Someone started taking pictures. The high school band, oblivious to the drama, launched into a rousing version of Anchors Away. Careful there, consultant, I said, offering Daniel a hand up. These small-town festivals can be tricky to navigate. Daniel slapped my hand away and struggled to his feet, dripping chowder and covered in lobster shells. His expensive clothes were ruined, and his dignity was in even worse shape. You're going to pay for this, he snarled. Already have, I said cheerfully. 15 years of marriage, to be exact. Elise was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Jack, what's gotten into you? Clarity, I said. Amazing what you can see when you stop believing lies. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their perfect public debut. Behind me, I could hear Mrs. Callahan's voice rising above the crowd noise, already spreading the story to anyone who'd missed the show. The festival was just getting started, and so was I. By Sunday morning, the story of Daniel's lobster roll baptism had spread through town like fog rolling in from the ocean. I knew this because my phone had been ringing since dawn with calls from neighbors, former clients, and people I hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to hear my side of the story. The 8th call was from Tom Bradley, who owned Bradley's Hardware and served as the unofficial mayor of local opinion. Jack, I've been hearing some interesting stories about yesterday's festival, Tom said without preamble. Want to tell me what's really going on? My wife's having an affair with a business consultant from Boston, I said. They've been planning to leave town together, and yesterday they decided to make their relationship public. And you decided to introduce his face to a lobster roll. He swung first. I just helped him find his balance. Tom chuckled. Well, for what it's worth, most folks seem to think you showed remarkable restraint. That boy was asking for trouble from the moment he started throwing money around and acting like he owned the place. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the support. Don't mention it, but Jack, be careful. Guys like that, they don't like being embarrassed in public. He might try to cause you real problems. Tom was right to be concerned. I'd humiliated Daniel in front of half the town, and men with fragile egos tended to escalate when their pride was damaged. I needed to be ready for whatever came next. Mason arrived at my house around 10, carrying coffee and donuts from the bakery. You're famous, he announced. Mrs. Patterson at the coffee shop said you're a local hero. She also said Elise hasn't been seen since yesterday afternoon. Where is she? Back at the Seaside Manor, according to the tracking app. But here's the interesting part. Daniel's car isn't there anymore. I raised an eyebrow. Trouble in paradise? Maybe. Or maybe he's planning something. Mason set up his laptop on my kitchen table. I've been monitoring his social media and email. Guy's been busy making phone calls to Boston, and he's not happy. Mason showed me screenshots of Daniel's Instagram stories from the past 12 hours. The tone had shifted from romantic vacation posts to angry rants about small-town ignorance and dealing with local problems. He's also been researching you, Mason continued. Your business, your finances, your reputation. Looks like he's trying to find leverage. Let him look. I've got nothing to hide. That's what I figured. But Jack, there's something else. I hacked into his email, don't ask me how, and found some messages that might interest you. The emails were between Daniel and someone named Marcus Webb, apparently his business partner in Boston. The conversation made my blood run cold. Marcus. How's the Maine project going? Still planning to relocate the asset? Daniel. Hit a snag with the husband. Local yokel thinks he can embarrass me in public. Need to neutralize the situation before proceeding. Marcus. What kind of neutralization are we talking about? Daniel. Nothing dramatic. Just need to discredit him. Maybe create some legal problems. Small-town contractor probably has tax issues or permit violations we can exploit. Marcus. Be careful. Don't create more problems than you solve. Daniel, don't worry. These people don't know how to fight back against real pressure. I stared at the screen, feeling a familiar anger building in my chest. Daniel wasn't just stealing my wife. He was planning to destroy my life to make it easier. When were these sent? I asked. This morning, about an hour ago. I stood up and walked to my workshop, Mason following close behind. My tools hung on the pegboard wall in perfect order, each one clean and sharp and ready for work. I'd built my reputation in this town with these tools, one honest job at a time. Mason, I said, how would you feel about switching from defense to offense? I thought you'd never ask. What did you have in mind? Daniel thinks he can use pressure to get what he wants. Time to show him what real pressure looks like. I spent the next hour making phone calls to people I'd worked with over the years. Contractors, suppliers, town officials, business owners, the network of relationships I'd built through 15 years of reliable work and fair dealing. The first call was to Jim Morrison, the building inspector who'd approved most of my major projects. Jim, it's Jack Harper. I need a favor. After what I heard about yesterday, you can have anything you want. That city boy had it coming. I need you to take a very close look at the Tidewater Inn's recent renovations, especially any work that might have been done without proper permits. Interesting timing. I was just thinking that place might need a surprise inspection. The second call was to Sarah Chen, who ran the town's tourism board and had significant influence over business licenses. Sarah, I'm wondering if you've had a chance to review the consulting contracts for our local hotels, particularly any work being done by out-of-state consultants who might not have proper business licenses. You know, Jack, I've been meaning to look into that. Some of these outside consultants don't seem to understand our local regulations. The third call was to Mike Rodriguez, who owned the towing company and had strong opinions about people who parked illegally or abandoned vehicles. Mike, there's a BMW with Massachusetts plates that's been parked in various no-parking zones around town. Owner seems to think the rules don't apply to him. I hate when people think they're above the law. I'll keep an eye out for violations. By noon, I'd set several wheels in motion. Daniel wanted to play hardball with a small-town contractor, but he'd underestimated how tight-knit small towns could be when they closed ranks against an outsider. Mason was monitoring Daniel's communications and reported that he'd received several phone calls that seemed to upset him greatly. His language is getting pretty colorful, Mason said. Lots of complaints about corrupt small-town politics and coordinated harassment. Funny how following the rules feels like harassment when you're used to cutting corners, I said. My phone rang. It was Elise. Jack, what are you doing? Her voice was strained, almost panicked. I'm having lunch. What are you doing? Don't play games with me. Daniel's been getting calls all morning from town officials. His car got towed. The hotel is being inspected. This has your fingerprints all over it. I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe your boyfriend should have been more careful about following local regulations. Jack, please, we need to talk. We needed to talk 6 weeks ago before you started planning your exit strategy. Now we need to finish what you started. I hung up and turned to Mason. How long before Daniel realizes he's outmatched? Based on his current stress level, I'd say about 6 hours. Perfect. That gives us time to prepare the next phase. Daniel made his move that night, just after midnight. I was waiting for him. Mason's motion sensors had alerted me when someone approached my workshop, and the security camera I'd installed last month gave me a clear view of Daniel trying to pick the lock on my door. He was dressed in dark clothes and moved with the clumsy stealth of someone who'd watched too many spy movies. I gave him 5 minutes to get frustrated with the lock, then stepped out of the shadows behind him. Looking for something specific? Daniel spun around, nearly dropping his lockpicks. In the moonlight, his face was pale and desperate. Jack, I was just breaking into my workshop. Yeah, I can see that. I kept my voice conversational, but I positioned myself between Daniel and the driveway. Question is, what did you think you'd find in there? I know you've been sabotaging me, Daniel said, trying to recover his composure. The inspections, the towing, all of it. You think you can destroy my business relationship with the hotel? Your business relationship, I smiled. Is that what we're calling it? This is bigger than your hurt feelings, Jack. I'm trying to help Elise build a real career, not waste her life in this dead-end town. How noble of you. And breaking into my workshop helps her career how, exactly? Daniel's mask slipped completely. I need leverage, something to make you back off and stop interfering. Leverage? Like what? Tax records? Business documents? Something that shows you're not the upstanding citizen everyone thinks you are. Daniel's voice was getting desperate. Everyone cuts corners, Jack. I just need to find yours. I stepped closer, and Daniel backed against the workshop door. Here's the thing, Daniel. I don't cut corners. I've been doing business in this town for 15 years, and every permit, every tax return, every invoice is exactly what it should be. Nobody's that clean. Small town contractors are. We have to be, because everyone's watching. I reached past him and unlocked the workshop door. But since you're so curious, why don't you take a look around? I flipped on the lights, revealing my workshop in all its organized glory. Tools arranged by size and function, lumber sorted and labeled, project plans filed in neat folders. Everything legal, documented, and transparent. Go ahead, I said. Search all you want. While you're doing that, let me tell you what I found when I started researching you. Daniel didn't move, so I continued. Daniel Ferris, business consultant. Registered in Massachusetts, but your license expired 6 months ago. You've been operating illegally in Maine without proper permits. The consulting contract you signed with the Tidewater Inn? Void, because you're not legally authorized to do business here. Daniel's face went white. Oh, and that BMW you've been driving around town? Registered to your ex-wife in Boston, who reported it stolen 3 days ago when she found out about your little vacation. That's impossible. Jennifer would and did. Turns out she's been tracking your movements through the car's GPS system. She knows exactly where you've been and who you've been with. I smiled. She also knows about the company credit cards you've been using to finance your romantic getaway. Daniel slumped against the workbench. You don't understand. Elise and I, we have something real. I'm trying to build a future with her. By stealing from your ex-wife and lying to my wife about your business prospects? I shook my head. Daniel, you're not building anything. You're just running a con game, and Elise is your mark. That's not true, isn't it? Let me guess, you promised to set her up with her own event planning business in Boston. Told her you had connections, capital, opportunities she'd never find in a small town like this? Daniel's silence was answer enough. Here's what's really going to happen, I continued. Jennifer's already contacted the police about the stolen car. The state licensing board is investigating your illegal business activities, and the IRS is very interested in those company credit card charges. I walked to my tool rack and selected a hammer, testing its weight in my hand. Daniel flinched. Relax, I said. I'm not going to hit you with it. I'm just going to explain something about tools. I held up the hammer. This is a 16-ounce framing hammer. I've used it to build houses, furniture, decks, and pretty much everything else in this town that's worth building. It's honest work, with honest tools, for honest pay. I set the hammer down and picked up a screwdriver. This is a Phillips head screwdriver. I use it to put things together, to fix things that are broken, to make things stronger. I looked directly at Daniel. You want to know what I don't have? Tools for tearing things down that don't need to be torn down. Tools for breaking into things that don't belong to me. Tools for destroying other people's lives. What's your point? My point is that you came here tonight looking for leverage, but you already had the only leverage that mattered, my wife's trust, and you threw it away the moment you decided to lie to her about who you really are. I opened the workshop door. Get out of my shop, Daniel. Get out of my town, and get out of my wife's life before you destroy hers too. Daniel stumbled toward the door, then turned back. This isn't over, Jack. Elise loves me. She's going to choose me. Maybe she will, I said. But when she finds out the truth about you, she's going to have to live with that choice. Can you? After Daniel left, I called Mason. Phase 3? He asked. Phase 3, I confirmed. Time to show Elise exactly who she's been planning her future with. The Tidewater Inn's lobby was designed to impress tourists with its blend of rustic Maine charm and modern luxury. Exposed beams, local artwork, and a massive stone fireplace created an atmosphere of expensive authenticity. It was also the perfect stage for a public revelation, because Tuesday afternoon was when the inn hosted its weekly networking event for local business owners. I arrived at exactly 3 o'clock, wearing my best suit and carrying a manila folder that contained everything Mason and I had discovered about Daniel Ferris. The lobby was crowded with familiar faces, shop owners, restaurant managers, real estate agents, and other members of the local business community. Elise was working the event, circulating with a tray of local cheese and craft beer samples. She looked professional and confident, playing the role of the successful hospitality manager. She also looked surprised to see me. Jack, what are you doing here? Business networking, I said pleasantly. I thought it was time to meet some of Mr. Ferris's professional associates. Elise's eyes darted around the room. Daniel's not here. He had to go back to Boston for a few days. Really? That's interesting, because his car is still in the impound lot. Before Elise could respond, I walked to the center of the lobby and raised my voice just enough to get everyone's attention. Excuse me, everyone. I'm Jack Harper, local contractor. I wanted to take a moment to share some information about the business consultant who's been working with the Tidewater Inn. The room gradually quieted. Margaret Steinberg, the inn's owner, looked confused but interested. I'm sure many of you have met Daniel Ferris over the past few weeks, I continued. He's been very active in our business community, making connections and offering consulting services. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. What you might not know is that Mr. Ferris's business license expired 6 months ago, making all of his consulting work in Maine legally questionable. Margaret stepped forward. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your consulting contract is void, Mrs. Steinberg. Mr. Ferris has been operating without proper licensing, which means any advice he's given you, any changes he's recommended, any money you've paid him, it's all based on fraudulent representation. The room erupted in murmurs. Elise pushed through the crowd, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Jack, stop this. You're making a scene. I'm sharing public information with local business owners who deserve to know the truth. I pulled out the second document. I'm also sharing the fact that Mr. Ferris has been using stolen credit cards to finance his stay in our town. That's not true, Elise said desperately. It's completely true. The BMW he's been driving, reported stolen by his ex-wife. The corporate credit cards he's been using for dinners and hotel rooms. Unauthorized use of company funds. I looked directly at Margaret. Mrs. Steinberg, how much has the inn paid Mr. Ferris for his consulting services? $15,000, Margaret said slowly, plus accommodations and meal expenses. You might want to contact your lawyer about recovering those funds. And Mrs. Steinberg, you might also want to ask your events manager what she knew about Mr. Ferris's background. All eyes turned to Elise, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I didn't know, she said weakly. He told me he was a legitimate businessman. He told you a lot of things, I said, like how he was going to set you up with your own event planning business in Boston, how he had connections and capital and opportunities you'd never find in a small town. I pulled out the final document, printouts of Daniel's emails that Mason had recovered. What he didn't tell you is that he's been planning to use you as a front for money laundering. His business opportunities involve setting up shell companies to hide stolen funds. You weren't going to be his business partner, Elise. You were going to be his accomplice. Elise grabbed the papers with shaking hands. As she read, her face went from red to white to gray. This can't be real, she whispered. It's all real. The FBI is investigating Daniel's business practices. His ex-wife is pursuing criminal charges for theft, and the IRS is auditing every transaction he's made in the past year. I took the papers back gently. Elise, you were about to throw away your life for a man who was planning to use you as a shield when the law caught up with him. The silence in the lobby was deafening. Then Margaret Steinberg spoke up. Elise, I think we need to have a private conversation about your employment status. Mrs. Steinberg, please, I can explain. You can explain how you recommended we hire a consultant without checking his credentials, how you vouched for someone who was defrauding us. Margaret's voice was cold. Clear out your office, Elise. Your employment here is terminated immediately. Elise looked around the room desperately, searching for a friendly face, someone who might offer support or understanding. She found none. The same community that had welcomed her as Jack Harper's wife was now closing ranks against her as the woman who had brought a criminal into their midst. Jack, she said, tears starting to flow. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Can we talk privately? We can talk, I said. But not here, and not now. You've got bigger problems to worry about. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Elise, you might want to get a lawyer. When the FBI starts investigating Daniel's activities, they're going to want to interview everyone who was close to him. I walked out of the Tidewater Inn feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear the buzz of conversation as the local business community processed what they'd just learned. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. Daniel's back in town. Looks like he's heading to your house. I smiled and texted back, Perfect timing. Let's finish this. Daniel was waiting in my driveway when I got home, pacing back and forth beside a rental car like a caged animal. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his hair was disheveled, and he had the desperate look of a man whose carefully constructed world was collapsing around him. You son of a bitch, he snarled as I got out of my truck. You destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything, I said calmly. I just turned on the lights. Elise lost her job because of you. The FBI is asking questions because of you. My life is ruined because of you. Your life is ruined because you're a criminal, Daniel. I just made sure people knew about it. Daniel squared up like he wanted a fight. calling me a small-town carpenter who won a broken marriage and a wife who hated me. I told him maybe, but I wouldn't be sharing a prison cell with her. He ranted about million-dollar deals I'd ruined. I corrected him, stolen money, and the FBI was already circling. That's when his voice cracked. He admitted the people he'd taken money from weren't just investors. If he couldn't deliver, they'd kill him. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, just a tired pity. I told him to hope the FBI found him first. He begged me to stop cooperating, to let him disappear. I said I couldn't, and even if I could, I wouldn't. This wasn't revenge. It was consequences. Then he tried to hurt me where it counted. He said Elise was bored with me, that I was safe and small, and that he made her feel alive. I didn't react. I just asked if that was what he told himself while planning to use her to launder money. His confidence broke. A taxi pulled up. Elise got out in tears, saying she'd lost her job because of the investigation. Daniel wrapped her up and tried to rush her into running. Elise demanded the truth. He hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything. She snapped, realizing she'd risked her whole life for a criminal who was about to drag her down with him. Then she turned to me, apologizing, asking if we could rebuild. I looked at her and understood something simple and final. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was someone I used to know. I told her I'd help her get a good lawyer and to tell the full truth. Elise told Daniel to never contact her again and asked to grab a few things from the house. As we walked away, he shouted that this wasn't over. I told him to turn himself in before his partners decided he was a liability. He drove off. I never saw him again. 2 weeks later, an article said Daniel was found dead, a robbery gone wrong, and the FBI case continued. I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sense that justice had been handled by the wrong people. Elise moved to Portland and started over. 6 months later, we finalized the divorce quietly. At the courthouse, she said she was sorry. I said I was sorry too, for thinking I wasn't enough. She looked at me and said I always was. She'd just forgotten how to see it. Then we walked to our separate cars, and I drove back to my quiet workshop and a life that was finally my own.